Imagine being at a concert and watching it turn into chaos. Suddenly the music doesn't matter anymore. These are moments where ego, booze, and rage take over. Today, I'm breaking down 10 of the worst onstage meltdowns in rock history that left crowds stunned and confused.
Well, hello, Glen Helen Regional Park! Look at all the people here tonight!
Watching David Lee Roth at the 1983 US Festival feels like watching rock stardom short circuit in real time. Van Halen had just secured a record-breaking paycheck. Roth was at the absolute peak of his persona, and instead of tightening the screws, he let everything unravel. He rambles endlessly, drinks whiskey on stage, antagonizes the crowd, and turns a massive festival set into a one-man monologue about arrests, girlfriends, and himself.
More people have been arrested today than the entire weekend last year, man!
What strikes me now isn't just the intoxication, but the timing. This happens right as tensions inside Van Halen were becoming impossible to ignore. Eddie is trying to keep the music moving while Roth keeps stopping it. It's entertaining, embarrassing, and revealing all at once. It wasn't just excess for excess's sake. It feels like the moment where charisma finally stopped compensating for discipline, and the cracks in the classic lineup became impossible to hide.
This is real whiskey here.
I've an abbreviated set tonight. We've got a 55-minute set instead of a 1-hour show for you. What the fuck? Just a few wise-asses decided that they would go down the supermarket and buy a few fucking eggs and start throwing at us down the front.
The Iron Maiden egging at Ozzfest never felt like a tantrum to me. It felt like a siege. Bruce Dickinson had been openly critical of reality television and Ozzy's celebrity transformation, and Sharon Osbourne decided to answer that criticism in the most petty way imaginable.
Guys, listen, I need you quiet for 1 minute. I want to take this opportunity to thank Iron Maiden and their crew. Their crew and the band are unbelievable, and we love them. But there's just one thing. The singer, Bruce Dickinson, is a prick!
Eggs start flying mid-set, and Maiden are contractually forced to keep playing. What makes this moment powerful is Bruce's refusal to back down. He doesn't leave the stage. He doesn't soften his tone. He stares straight into the chaos and keeps going, even while being pelted. That kind of defiance is old school to the core. This wasn't about ego or booze. It was about dignity under pressure. Watching it now, it feels like a clash between corporate spectacle and traditional metal values. Maiden didn't melt down by losing control. They melted down by being pushed until endurance itself became the statement.
If you see somebody throwing some shit at this band and they raise their arm, make sure that when it goes down, it's in 2 fucking pieces for me, will ya?
Henry Rollins getting hit in the face with a beer can in Berlin is one of the rawest moments in live rock footage. Black Flag weren't protected and weren't welcomed. Most of all, they weren't treated like guests. Punk shows in the early 80s were volatile, and this incident crossed a line instantly. Rollins stops everything and explodes, not theatrically, but personally. You can hear the disbelief in his voice. He didn't provoke anyone. He didn't invite the hit. He came to play and got assaulted.
Trying to sing the fucking songs for you guys, trying to play, and you fucking hit me in the face with a beer can? Is that all you can do? I'm trying to sing, we're trying to play as hard as we can for everybody here. We came a long fucking way to play here. We came a long way to play here for everyone in this hall. And everyone who came here came to have a good time.
This isn't a rock star flexing power, it's a man demanding basic respect in a hostile room. What makes this meltdown resonate is that it isn't funny or clever. It's uncomfortable. Rollins later talked about how moments like this hardened his view of audiences forever. This is punk without safety nets, where confrontation wasn't branding. It was a constant risk you carried onto the stage every night.
And then there's a couple of assholes like you who now throw fucking beer cans. And you hit me right in my head. Wait a minute. I never did a fucking thing to you. And you hit me in my fucking face with a beer can.
Just be aware of that. And I think that these guys should be aware of that. Alright? A lot of the good money these kids cough up to come here goes in your pocket.
Tom Araya stopping a Slayer show to confront security hits differently than most meltdowns. There's no slurring, no rambling. He's angry because he sees fans being mishandled at the barricade, something Slayer crowds were constantly subjected to in the 80s and 90s. Metal fans were treated like problems before anything even happened. Araya had intervened before, and this moment feels like the breaking point.
You're choosing to be up front here and taking the bullshit that comes over. You gotta deal with that. It's part of your job description.
He directs his anger downward, not at the audience, but at authority. That matters. This isn't ego, it's loyalty. Slayer's reputation was built on intensity, but also on trust between band and crowd. When that trust was violated, Araya reacted instantly. Watching the clip, you can tell he's done negotiating. He's not trying to entertain. He's drawing a line. For older metal fans, this meltdown feels justified, even necessary. It's a reminder that some anger on stage comes from protection, not loss of control.
Come on stage. Come on stage, badass. Come on. Come on stage. You bring your ass on stage, you ever throwing shit at me, I will tell you right now, I will beat the fuck out of you.
The Smash Mouth so-called bread meltdown is hard to watch because it never should have happened. This wasn't a hostile crowd or a rock festival. It was a family-friendly food market where people were tossing loaves of bread like a joke. Instead of laughing it off, the singer spirals. He threatens violence, insults the crowd, and repeatedly stops the show. Alcohol is clearly involved, and knowing now about his long struggles with drinking makes the moment feel sad rather than shocking. This wasn't rebellion. It was loss of control in the worst possible setting.
Come on, somebody throw one more thing at me right now, and I'm gonna find you after.
The band's legacy takes a hit in real time as the crowd watches something silly turn ugly. For older fans, this feels like a warning about nostalgia tours without boundaries. Not every stage is the same, and not every situation demands dominance. Sometimes the meltdown isn't about ego, it's about not knowing when to step back before the damage becomes permanent.
Give me a hug? I'm not a fucking monkey. Get your fucking ugly ass the fuck out of here. Get her the fuck out of here.
Sebastian Bach's meltdown feels intensely personal, which is what makes it uncomfortable. A fan asks for a hug earlier in the night while he's with his wife. Later, she flips him off from the crowd. Bach spots her and detonates, stopping the show to demand her removal, while insulting her publicly. This isn't about security or sound or principle. It's about wounded pride. The reaction is disproportionate, and that's the point.
She comes up while I'm talking to my wife saying, hey, can Sebastian give me a hug? I'm not a
Bach has always been volatile, and moments like this explain why Skid Row never reunited with him. Big voices need balance, and without it, ego fills the gap. Watching this now, it feels less like rock excess and more like insecurity, boiling over under stage lights. For fans who grew up with hair metal, this meltdown lands as a reminder that attitude can't carry everything forever. At some point, control matters more than volume.
Fucking video games on his phone while we're playing.
David Draiman calling out a fan for texting during a show felt righteous at first. Many older fans agreed with him immediately. Phones didn't belong at concerts. Attention mattered. But when the full context emerged that the woman was texting her daughter during a storm, the moment aged fast. Draiman's anger wasn't fake, but it was misplaced. This meltdown lives at the intersection of generations.
Show. You're right up front. I can see you. Clear as day. You've had your face in your fucking phone the whole goddamn show.
Old rules colliding with new realities. He publicly shames someone from the stage, assuming disrespect, only to learn later that life doesn't pause for concerts anymore. To his credit, he apologized, but the damage was already viral. What makes this moment interesting isn't the yelling, it's the lesson. You never know what's happening beyond the crowd. For rock fans raised on total immersion, this meltdown marks the moment when absolute authority on stage started slipping, replaced by something more complicated and human.
Welcome to the age of the internet, ladies and fucking gentlemen.
Flea losing his temper over his bass sound is the most relatable meltdown on this list. There's no crowd abuse, no threats, no ego display, just frustration. He can't hear himself properly, confronts his tech mid-song, and visibly unravels for a moment. The irony, of course, is that the issue may have been his own in-ear monitors. Flea is famously obsessive about sound, especially bass clarity, and that perfectionism usually fuels incredible performances. Here, it backfires. This meltdown feels human rather than destructive. It's the crack in discipline that happens when someone cares too much, not too little. For older fans who watched bands struggle through bad monitors and terrible mixes in the 80s, this moment hits close to home. It's not about control over others. It's about losing control over a craft you take seriously, even for just a few seconds.
You don't fucking slam somebody on their fucking head like that, you fucking douchebag.
Ivan Moody isn't a 70s rock name, so let me set the stage. He's the frontman of Five Finger Death Punch, a modern American heavy band built on aggression, groove, and militaristic imagery. In the early 2000s, the band exploded in popularity, but Moody's volatility often became part of the show. This meltdown happens during a period where alcohol was clearly in control. He stops the concert, demands the lights be turned on, singles out fans who are booing him, and openly threatens physical violence.
You know what? Hold on. Have some balls. Turn on the lights, John. Hold on. Shh. There's a few guys here booing me. Where you at, pussies?
Security gets involved, the music completely halts, and the atmosphere turns genuinely dangerous. What makes this uncomfortable isn't just the language, it's the unpredictability. This doesn't feel staged or performative. It feels like a frontman losing authority in real time. For an older rock audience, this echoes late-era meltdowns we've seen before, when excess stops being fun and starts poisoning the room entirely completely.
That's what I thought, you little fucking pony bitch.
I don't want to say who it is, but I'm going to beat his motherfucking ass. So this is called The Beautiful I'm going to kick your ass motherfucker people.
The Manson vs. Zombie meltdown feels less explosive and more unsettling the longer you watch it. Manson shows up late, clearly impaired, and instead of owning it, he redirects blame straight at Rob Zombie in front of the crowd. He threatens violence, changes lyrics mid-song, and poisons the atmosphere for everyone waiting to see the next act. By this point in his career, Manson's addiction was well documented, and it shows. This isn't shock rock as theater. It's shock rock without discipline. What makes it uncomfortable is that the meltdown doesn't feel spontaneous. It feels defensive. Zombie hadn't done anything. The accusation comes out of nowhere. For fans raised on Alice Cooper's professionalism, this moment highlights the difference between controlled spectacle and chaos bleeding through the costume. The makeup is still there, but the structure behind it has collapsed, turning the show into something awkward rather than dangerous or exciting. Yeah, Watching moments like these, you really feel how thin the line is, don't you? 1 second it's a concert, the next second it's just ego, anger, or excess, completely taking over. I don't know, man. Some of these are funny, some are uncomfortable, and some just feel sad in hindsight. If you stuck around till the end, hit like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments which Meltdown still gets under your skin the most, or which one you think should have been on this list.
Come on, somebody throw one more thing at me right now, and I'm gonna find you.
Show. You're right up front. I can see you. Clear as day.
You know what? Hold on. Have some balls. Turn on the lights, John. Hold on.